This is a flowchart on how you go about writing a machine learning algorithm. So you start. The first step is to gather data. You understand where the data is coming from, gather the data set, and then split the data. Splitting is required in order to train and test your model. I'm going to talk about it. So 80% and 20% split for train and test. You would use 80%. You can do 70-30 or 75-25, does not matter. So has target. In the example on the area and the furnished bedrooms and number of bedrooms as well as the price, the target variable or the target which you are trying to predict in a machine learning algorithm was the price. If you do not have a target, that means you do not know what to do and just want to explore, then you would do an unsupervised learning. We're not going to talk about unsupervised learning now. We're going to talk about supervised learning, meaning you have a target. Now, the target can be of two types. The first one is continuous. That means it can have any number, numeric. So, for example, price is a continuous variable. The price range can be 150,000 or 100,000 or 1,500 to 250,000 to 300,000 and whatever. So it can be any number. The range is not defined. However, discrete means you have classes, class A, class B, class C, or furnished a flag, yes or no. So class 1, class 2, class 3, type 1, type 2, type 3 are all discrete. So if you have target, then you would identify if it's a continuous, that means numeric, or discrete means class. If it is not continuous, or if it is continuous, then you would do classification for discrete and regression for continuous. Is it continuous? Yes, regression. If it is not continuous, then classification. Algorithm. So these are algorithms. We are not going to talk about this algorithm in this session. And then classification and regression, you would start training the model. You would write some Python or some kind of a code to train the model. The model is going to take in input and observation and create a model which is an equation, a mathematical calculation formula in order to provide an input based on the input and observation, derive the formula, and then formula can be used for predicting inputs based on the target. Sorry, predicting target based on the inputs. Now, the trained model is there, and then you have to test the model. Now, the test data is going to come into picture. And then again, you have to find out if it's continuous or not. If it is not continuous, then you would use confusion matrix to validate, test the accuracy of model. To test the accuracy of model, you're going to use confusion matrix or root mean square error for continuous variables. For discrete, confusion matrix. For continuous, you are going to use root mean square error. Or there are multiple other things, but this is very basic, very generic model flow. And then end. Please note that there are a lot of other things like hyperparameter tuning, normalization, standardization, feature scaling, uh, principal component analysis. There are a lot of other things which you would do, but this is the core, very generic form of model flowchart. In the next video or other videos, we are going to talk about how you can add more complexity to this model. But this is the basic of machine learning. Let's move on. So I'm going to talk to you on an example wherein we are going to automate a task of visual inspection. So think about a factory line where you are having 3 or 4 people doing a visual inspection of the number of the bottles, if it's good bottle or a reject. So you're going to gather the data. Remember the first step, gather data. So this is a good bottle picture. So input, observation, input, observation, input, observation. So now you have gathered the data, input and observations. This is a classification algorithm because it can be good, reject, good, reject. There are two classes. And next you train the model. So good and damaged bottle identification. and then you deploy the model using APIs, which is application programming interface. So basic, gather the data, train the model, deploy the model. So if you look at it, this image is reject because you have a defect over here. Next, how do you go about it? So think about automating tasks rather than a job. You don't want to automate a job. You should think about automating a task. What are the main drivers of the task? The main drivers of the task are to automate and make the visual inspection of these images or bottles to be human error free. Imagine the three or four or two or three people doing the manual visual inspection can do some better things. They can be released and can do some better things, which can be helpful in retaining those employees with a better job satisfaction. Next is steps of an AI project. We just talked about it. Gather data, train model, and deploy model. And then finally, insufficient data, mislabeled data, or ambiguous labels are some challenges of AI. We're going to talk about it in limited